This passbook is trash. My father's voice echoed through the country club's grand ballroom as he held up the worn leather book my grandfather had slipped into my hands just moments before. But he didn't just insult it. He walked over to the chocolate fountain at my wedding reception, the one that cost $4,000, and he dropped that passbook right into the melting chocolate in front of 250 guests who gasped and then laughed like it was part of the entertainment. I didn't hesitate. I reached into that scalding hot chocolate, burned my fingers, ruined my $1,200 wedding dress, grabbed that book, and I walked out of my own reception without saying a single word. What I discovered inside that chocolate, covered passbook 4 days later, didn't just change my entire life. It exposed my father's criminal operation, sent him to federal prison, and made me wealthier than he ever claimed to be. But before I reveal the $14 million hiding in those ruined pages, tell me in the comments, what's the most humiliating thing a parent has ever done to you in public? Because trust me, my story gets exponentially worse before it gets even remotely better. My name is Elena Morrison. I'm 31 years old, and for most of my life, I've been a ghost in my own family. I work as a pediatric emergency nurse at Children's Hospital in Philadelphia, and I'm exceptional at becoming invisible, at fading into the background while attending physicians bark orders and children fight for their lives on trauma tables. I've mastered the art of holding other people's secrets, of keeping my head down, of surviving in absolute chaos without making a single sound or drawing any attention to myself. That survival skill didn't come from my nursing training. It came from growing up as the daughter of Victor Morrison, a man who ruled our household like a dictator and gave my brother Travis everything while giving me nothing except endless criticism and contempt. 4 days after my wedding disaster, after my brand new husband Derek had convinced me not to throw the passbook away, I stood in the pristine lobby of Citizens Trust Bank in downtown Philadelphia, clutching that passbook inside a gallon-sized freezer bag. The pages were stiff, coated in dried chocolate that had turned grayish-brown, smelling like a combination of expensive cocoa and pure humiliation. I looked exactly like what my father had called me my entire life, worthless trash pretending to matter. The young bank teller, she couldn't have been older than 23, picked up that freezer bag with just her thumb and index finger like it might give her a disease, and I watched her face twist into this expression of barely concealed disgust. She clearly thought I was wasting her valuable time with some ancient account that had probably been closed before she was even born. I need you to check the balance on this account, I said quietly, sliding the bag across the polished granite counter. It was a gift from my grandfather before he passed away. The teller rolled her eyes so subtly that most people wouldn't have caught it. But I did. I've spent my whole life reading expressions of contempt. She pulled the chocolate-stained passbook out of the bag, holding it away from her designer blouse, and she started typing the account number into her computer with one hand while literally holding her nose with the other hand. She was expecting an error message, I could tell. She was probably expecting the system to show that this account had been closed in like 1970, something with a final balance of $12.37. Then everything changed. Her fingers stopped moving on the keyboard, they just froze mid-air like she'd been turned to stone. She blinked hard once, twice, 3 times. Then she leaned so close to her monitor that her nose almost touched the screen, and I watched every drop of color drain from her face until she looked like she might actually faint. "Ma'am," she whispered, and her voice was shaking so badly I almost didn't understand her words. "Ma'am, please don't move, don't go anywhere, don't leave this building. Just please wait right here." She didn't press a panic button, but she might as well have triggered a full-scale emergency alert. Within 30 seconds, and I mean exactly 30 seconds because I counted, the branch manager appeared, practically running across the lobby, and right behind her was this man in a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and I found out later he was the regional vice president. They weren't looking at my thrift store coat anymore. They weren't seeing the chocolate stains on my clothes. They were looking at me like I was some kind of long-lost royalty who had finally come home to reclaim a throne. "Miss Morrison," the regional vice president said, and he was slightly out of breath from moving so fast. "Miss Morrison, please come with us immediately. We've been waiting for someone to claim this account for more than 40 years. He gestured toward this massive steel door at the back of the bank, the kind of door you see in movies about bank heists, and both he and the branch manager escorted me through that door. like I was the most important person who had walked into that bank in decades. They led me into this private room that smelled like old paper, leather, and decades of accumulated dust. It was clearly a room where they kept their most valuable, most sensitive documents, and as they excused themselves to retrieve my grandfather's file from the vault, I sat down in this soft leather chair and I closed my eyes. Suddenly I wasn't in a bank vault anymore, I was 8 years old again, and I was kneeling on the cold tile floor in my father's home office. Victor was sitting in his leather executive chair, slowly sipping his evening bourbon, watching me with these cold, calculating eyes. He had spilled his drink on purpose. I knew he had because I'd seen him tip the glass slightly. But the rule in our house was absolutely clear and non-negotiable. Daughters clean, sons succeed. Travis was sprawled on the leather sofa, playing some violent video game and laughing. His dirty shoes propped up on the mahogany coffee table I had just spent an hour polishing until it gleamed. "You missed a spot, Elena," Victor said in this soft, dangerous voice. He never yelled at me, he didn't need to yell. He preferred to have an audience for his cruelty. He enjoyed watching the light die in my eyes, while other people witnessed my humiliation. It was his twisted form of entertainment, his personal theater of psychological torture. When my grandfather Benjamin tried to help me stand up, Victor's voice turned into a weapon. "Touch that worthless girl, old man, and I'll have you in a state nursing home so fast you won't even have time to pack your medication. Do you understand me?" I scrubbed that floor until my knuckles literally bled that day, until the skin split open and blood mixed with the cleaning solution. I scrubbed because I genuinely believed I had zero value outside of what I could silently endure, what pain I could absorb without complaining. The heavy metallic clank of the vault door opening snapped me back to reality. I opened my eyes and I wasn't that helpless 8-year-old girl anymore. I was the woman who was about to light a match and watch everything burn. The regional vice president placed this incredibly thick file on the table. It must have been 3 inches of documents. "Miss Morrison, your grandfather didn't just open a simple savings account," he explained. "In 1983, and he established what's called a Totten Trust, and he was an extremely early investor in companies like Apple, Microsoft, and Amazon when they were just starting out. He funneled every single dividend payment back into the investment portfolio and never touched a penny for over 40 years. He turned the primary document toward me, and I saw numbers that didn't seem real. The current value of this trust, legally payable to you upon your grandfather's death, is $14,673,000. I stared at that number, just stared at it, $14,673,000. I thought about that chocolate fountain. I thought about Victor laughing into the microphone and calling this fortune literal trash. I thought about how he had held $14 million in his hands and thrown it away, because he was too arrogant and too stupid to look inside the cover. "Is there anyone else listed on this account?" I asked, and my voice sounded clinical, detached, like I was asking about a patient's blood type. "No," the vice president said clearly. "Just you, Miss Morrison. The entire amount is exclusively and entirely yours. No other names appear anywhere on these documents." I touched that ruined, chocolate-covered passbook with trembling fingers. This wasn't just money sitting in an account. This was a loaded weapon, and for the first time in my entire life, I knew exactly who I needed to aim it at. My husband Derek was exactly where I'd left him that morning, hunched over his laptop at our tiny kitchen table, completely surrounded by what looked like hundreds of printed spreadsheets, documents, and financial statements. The air in our small apartment felt electric, charged with this crackling energy of something massive about to explode. Derek isn't just a regular data analyst, he's a forensic financial investigator. He's the kind of person who finds the hairline cracks in financial foundations that nobody else can see, the irregularities that expose entire criminal enterprises. "It's not an empire, Elena," he said without even looking up from his screen. His voice was completely flat, emotionless, clinical. "It's an elaborate Ponzi scheme built entirely on bridge loans, shell companies, and your father's massive ego." I walked over and looked at his laptop monitor, and I had expected to see wealth. I expected to see the millions that Victor bragged about at every charity gala, every family dinner, every public appearance. Instead, I saw red numbers, I saw debt, I saw disaster. "He's completely insolvent," Derek said, tapping a document with his pen. "The mansion in Newport, foreclosure proceedings were filed 6 weeks ago. The family trust he claims to personally manage, it's completely empty. There's literally $0 in it. He's been moving the same 70 $5,000 between 8 different shell company accounts to create the illusion that he has liquidity, that he has actual money. And here's the part that's going to blow your mind. He's currently being audited by the IRS. They sent him a notice of deficiency 2 months ago. I stared at those numbers on the screen, at the evidence of financial fraud, and I realized something profound. The man who had thrown my grandfather's legacy into a chocolate fountain wasn't a brilliant business tycoon. He was a desperate con artist drowning in an ocean of debt and lies. He didn't just want money anymore, he desperately needed money to stay out of federal prison. My phone started ringing, and when I looked at the screen, I saw it was him. It was Victor. I looked at Derek, he nodded, and I put the phone on speaker before answering. Elena, Victor's voice filled our small kitchen, and there was no apology in his tone. No acknowledgement of what he'd done at my wedding, just the aggressive confidence of a man who still believed he owned the entire world and everyone in it. "I've been thinking about that shack your grandfather left you," he said. "That cottage property." "What about it?" I asked, and I placed my hand flat on the table to stop it from shaking, but my voice came out cold as ice. "I'm going to do you a huge favor," he continued. "I've already spoken with my real estate attorney. We can liquidate that property very quickly. I'll personally handle the entire sale, get you a fair market price, and invest the proceeds into the family business so you can actually get a decent return on the investment. You're just a nurse, sweetheart. You don't know the first thing about property taxes or property maintenance or real estate markets. I'm trying to save you from a massive headache." He wanted the cottage, the only tangible asset Benjamin had left me besides the passbook. It was worth maybe $350,000, which is nothing to a supposed billionaire, but it was a critical lifeline to a desperate, broke fraudster trying to cover his crimes. "I'm not selling, Dad," I said firmly. The phone line went completely silent, so silent I thought the call might have dropped. Then the mask came off. The fake concerned father disappeared completely. "You listen to me very carefully," he snarled, and his voice dropped an entire octave into this threatening growl. "That senile old man was mentally incompetent when he signed that deed. I have 3 witnesses ready to testify in court that you manipulated a confused geriatric patient into signing over family assets. If you don't sign the transfer paperwork by Friday, I will sue you for elder abuse. I will drag you through probate court until you're completely bankrupt. Do you understand me? You're way out of your depth." He wasn't trying to protect me. He was desperately hunting for any asset he could seize, liquidate, and funnel into his collapsing house of cards. "I understand perfectly," I said calmly. "Good," he snapped. "I'll have my attorney send the papers tomorrow." The call ended abruptly. I looked at Derek, and he wasn't scared. He wasn't worried. He was smiling, this cold, predatory smile that matched the feeling rising in my chest like a fire. Victor thought he was bullying his helpless, submissive daughter. He had absolutely no idea he had just handed us the complete blueprint to his total destruction. He was desperate now, and desperate men make catastrophic mistakes. I waited exactly 24 hours before calling him back, because silence is a powerful amplifier. It allows desperation to breed and multiply like bacteria. Derek and I spent that entire day not in panic mode, but in preparation mode, in strategy mode. We didn't hire a lawyer to fight the cottage sale. Instead, we hired a graphic designer to create a complete portfolio of realistic investment documents. Documents that would look exactly like what Victor would expect to see. When I finally called Victor's number the next evening, I gave the performance of my entire life. I didn't channel the confident woman who had walked out of that bank vault. Instead, I channeled the terrified 8-year-old girl who was afraid of spilling bourbon. "Dad," I whispered when he answered, and I intentionally let my voice shake and tremble. "I'm so sorry I hung up on you. I didn't know what to say." "You should be sorry," he snapped, but I could hear the edge softening slightly. He was listening now, he was paying attention. "It's not just about the cottage," I said, pitching my voice to this perfect frequency of naive panic and fear. "I went to the bank yesterday. I took the passbook that fell into the chocolate, and it wasn't empty." The line went dead silent, and I could practically hear his brain working, doing the calculations, wondering how much money we were talking about. "How much?" he asked. And the greed in his voice was so thick it was almost physical. It leaked through the phone like oil. $14 million, I choked out, letting my voice crack. $14,600,000, but Dad, I don't know what to do. The bank manager started talking about capital gains taxes and federal audits, and I think I'm in serious trouble. If the IRS finds out I suddenly have this money, they're going to take half of it, and I don't know how to hide it or shelter it or anything. It was absolutely perfect bait. I handed him exactly what he believed about me, that I was weak, stupid, and completely incapable of handling money or power. And simultaneously I handed him exactly what he desperately needed: a massive injection of liquidity to cover his fraudulent debts and keep him out of prison. "Listen to me very carefully, Alyssa," he said, and his voice transformed instantly from aggressive bully to concerned savior, and it was genuinely chilling to hear. "Do not sign anything with that bank, do not talk to any lawyers or financial advisors, you bring all that paperwork directly to me. I can shelter the entire amount under the family trust structure. We can classify it as a pre-existing family asset. It's complicated tax law, but I can make the entire tax liability disappear completely. I'm doing this to protect you, sweetheart. Protect me." He wanted to swallow my inheritance whole to plug the massive holes in his sinking financial ship. "Can we do this tonight?" I asked, injecting urgency into my voice. "No," he said too quickly, too eagerly. He needed time to prepare his fraudulent transfer documents. "I have the Businessman of the Year Gala this Saturday in Philadelphia. It's perfect timing. Bring all the documents there. We'll sign everything in the VIP suite before the speeches start. Then I'll announce the expansion of the Family Charitable Foundation. It'll look completely legitimate." He wanted an audience. He wanted the glory and prestige of announcing a $14 million windfall as proof of his brilliant business acumen. "Okay," I said meekly. "Thank you so much, Dad. Thank you for fixing this mess for me. That's what good fathers do," he said smugly. I ended the call, looked at Derek, and the fake fear vanished from my face instantly, replaced by cold determination. "He took the bait," I said. Derek nodded and held up a stack of documents. "Already printing everything we're actually going to present to him," he said. "They look exactly like standard trust transfer forms, same fonts, same legal headers, same formatting, but the fine print isn't a transfer of funds. It's an affidavit of sole liability that ties him personally to every shell company he's created over the past 20 years. Victor thought he was reeling in a clueless, frightened daughter. He had no idea he had just invited his own executioner to his victory party. The Businessman of the Year charity gala was held in the magnificent grand ballroom of the Bellevue Hotel in downtown Philadelphia. Massive crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting light onto the shoulders of Philadelphia's elite, old money families, influential politicians, corporate executives, and in my father's case, desperate criminal ambition wrapped in an expensive tuxedo. I arrived at exactly 8 o'clock in the evening, not early, not late, perfectly on time. I wasn't wearing the beige, shapeless, modest clothes that Victor had always insisted I wear. Instead, I was wearing a tailored emerald green dress that cost more than my monthly car payment, and I walked directly through the center of the crowd. Not around the edges like I'd done my entire life. I saw Travis near the open bar, already drunk, laughing way too loud at his own jokes, trying desperately to impress people who didn't care. He didn't even notice me walking past. He was too busy playing the role of crown prince to a kingdom that didn't actually exist. Victor was at the front of the ballroom, positioned strategically between a senator and a federal judge, and he looked absolutely radiant, glowing with the confidence of a man who thought he'd just executed the perfect crime. When he saw me approaching through the crowd, his smile didn't change, but his eyes narrowed into these predatory slits. He quickly excused himself from his conversation and met me near the stage stairs, pulling me slightly into the shadows. "You're late," he hissed through his clenched teeth while keeping his fake smile perfectly in place for the cameras. "Do you have everything?" "I have everything," I said calmly, holding out an elegant navy blue leather portfolio folder. He practically ripped it from my hands. His greed was so powerful it was almost a physical force radiating off his body. "Is everything in here?" he demanded. "The transfer authorizations, the power of attorney documents, everything." "Everything's there, Dad," I said, exactly like you ask. It transfers the complete $14 million into the family trust structure. You just need to sign as the primary trustee to accept the assets. He opened the folder right there in the hallway, but he didn't actually read anything. He didn't examine the clauses. He didn't check the definitions or the dates. He just scanned quickly for the signature line. A smart man, an intelligent man, would have questioned why the document was titled Affidavit of Historical Management and Sole Criminal Liability. A smart man would have wondered why the dates listed went back 23 years, retroactively linking him by name to every shell company, every fraudulent transaction, every tax evasion scheme listed in the attached appendix. But Victor wasn't smart, he was just arrogant. He was so completely convinced of his own superiority and dominance that he couldn't even conceive of a reality where I was the threat, where I was the danger. He pulled an expensive Mont Blanc pen from his inner jacket pocket. "You finally did something right, Alina," he said while scribbling his signature with this dramatic flourish across the bottom of the page. He shoved the folder back into my hands dismissively, already turning his attention toward the stage. "Go find a seat in the back," he ordered. "I have a major announcement to make tonight." He practically bounded up the stairs to the stage, the spotlight hit him, and the crowd started applauding. I didn't go to the back like he'd ordered. Instead, I moved to the side of the room. I photographed the signature page with my phone, and I hit send. 3 miles away, Derek received that photo, immediately attached it to the comprehensive whistleblower complaint we'd spent 2 weeks preparing, and uploaded the entire package to the Department of Justice's secure portal. Moments later, Victor took the microphone on stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced with this booming, proud voice, "tonight we are launching a historic expansion of the Morrison Family Charitable Foundation, a $14 million investment into this city's future." He was confessing to federal crimes in real time, standing in front of 600 witnesses. He was claiming ownership and control of funds that I had just legally tied to 23 years of documented tax fraud. He thought he was unveiling his legacy. He thought this was his crowning achievement. He had no idea he was reading his own arrest warrant out loud. My phone vibrated in my hand. "Message received. IRS confirmation code 77 Delta. It's done," Derek's text said. Victor was still smiling, basking in applause, when the 60-foot LED screen behind him suddenly flickered and went dark. The Morrison Foundation logo disappeared, replaced by an official Department of Justice seal stamped with bright red letters that read "Federal Asset Seizure in Progress. Case number 4468. The applause died instantly, collapsing into this eerie, confused silence. Victor turned around, more confused than afraid at first, his brain simply refusing to accept a reality that didn't match his script. That was his fatal flaw, not stupidity, but entitlement. He genuinely never believed that someone he'd dismissed as insignificant could build a trap sophisticated enough to hold him. The ballroom's main doors burst open with a bang, and 8 IR's Criminal Investigation Division agents swept down the main aisle in formation. Victor Morrison, the lead agent, called out loudly, "Step away from the podium immediately." Victor actually clutched the microphone tighter. "Do you have any idea who I am?" he demanded. "Yes, sir, we do," the agent replied calmly. "You're the sole trustee who just signed a legal affidavit accepting full personal responsibility for 23 years of unreported offshore accounts, shell company fraud, and tax evasion." Victor spun toward me, his face turning this deep purple color. "She tricked me," he shouted, pointing directly at me. "My own daughter tricked me." "Save it for the grand jury, sir," the agent said. Handcuffs snapped shut around Victor's wrists with a metallic click that echoed through the silent ballroom. Cameras flashed like lightning as he was led away in front of everyone, stripped of all his fake grandeur, reduced to just another man in a rented tuxedo being arrested for financial crimes. I thought it was over. I genuinely thought that was the end. It wasn't even close. The VIP suite door suddenly slammed shut behind me with enormous force. I heard the lock click, and I spun around to see Travis standing there, his face bright red, sweating profusely, absolutely frantic with rage and panic. "You destroyed everything," he hissed at me. "It was already destroyed," I said calmly. "The money never existed. It was all fake." He grabbed a steak knife from the catering table. This wasn't strategy anymore. This wasn't calculated, it was pure animal instinct. The exact moment when the illusion of family completely collapses and desperate people show their true nature. Derek immediately stepped between us. "Put down the knife, Travis. Open the door." Travis actually lunged forward with the knife. Derek caught his wrist mid-thrust, twisted it hard, and I heard the bone snap with this horrible cracking sound. The knife clattered across the marble floor, and Travis collapsed, screaming. When federal agents finally forced the door open 30 seconds later, my brother was curled on the floor sobbing, not from physical pain, but from the complete irrelevance, from realizing he'd never mattered at all. That was 5 weeks ago. This morning, I'm sitting on the front porch of my cottage, the one Benjamin left me, the one Victor tried to steal. I've already fixed the roof, cleared the overgrown ivy, replaced the broken windows, turned it into an actual home. Victor was denied bail, all his assets are frozen and being liquidated, his fake empire is gone. Travis took a plea deal, assault charges, no inheritance waiting for him. Just the reality of having to actually work for the first time in his privileged life. I'm holding a copy of that affidavit in my hands, and I light it on fire right there on the porch, watching it burn. I don't need it anymore. The IRS and Department of Justice already have everything that actually matters, all the evidence, all the proof. This paper was just the fear I used to carry around. Derek sits down beside me, hands me a folder. The trust transfer is completely finalized, he says. It's all legally yours now, $14,673,000. What do you want to do with it? I look out at the ocean, at the morning sun reflecting off the waves. Nothing, I say. Let it grow. Let it sit there. I'm still a nurse, I'm still Elena. The money isn't power, it's just protection. Family isn't about blood. It's about who stands beside you when the vault finally opens. So that's how a chocolate covered passbook my father called trash became the weapon that destroyed his entire criminal empire. If this story resonated with you, if it gave you even a small amount of hope or strength, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. I share stories like Elena's every single week. Stories of people who refused to stay victims, who fought back and won. Drop a comment below and tell me, what would you have done differently in Elena's situation? Would you have exposed your father publicly or handled it privately? I read every single comment. And remember, being underestimated isn't a weakness. It's your greatest strategic advantage. I'll see you in the next story. Stay strong, stay smart, and never let anyone convince you that you're powerless.